Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Modern Sales Pros event. We're super excited to dive right in, but we'll give folks a couple more minutes to trickle in. I'd love to ask our speaker today with me a fun little icebreaker question. And if there are any fun Seinfeld fans in the crowd, do let us know in the chat if you have a favorite character on Seinfeld. But I'd love to know, Jason, if you have a favorite character on Seinfeld and who would
Uncle
it be?
Leo,
Well, oh, interesting. Why? Why is that it?
because
Why is
he
it your favorite?
has a past. And we never find out what it is. It was just a crime of passion. And he can't be arrested again because he has a past. So
Oh,
I was always waiting for Larry David to appear in the episode and tell you what the crime of passion was, but they never tell you.
oh, interesting. So it's just a story plot that they never they never told anyone.
They run it through a number of episodes too. There's one where he's doing pull-ups in prison, and
Hmm.
his like Cape Fear, and he's got the tattoos on his knuckles, and one says hello, the other says Jerry.
Nice. Well, we have George as a favorite in the chat. That's awesome. Thanks, Cameron, for sharing. And if anyone else watched Seinfeld, I know it's a fan favorite. Do let us know who your favorite character is.
George is a
Awesome.
good choice, though. It can't be Jerry. It's too obvious.
It's
And if
too
you're a fan of
obvious.
Seinfeld, you can't choose the obvious.
It's kind of like Michael Scott for The Office, although he is my favorite character in The Office.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started. Today's topic, we are talking about navigating lumpy sales, compensation, and forecasting for smoother results. But before we begin, I'm going to say a few words about the team at Modern Sales Pros. Hello, everyone. I'm Angelica. I'm one of the community event managers at MSP, and we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them to see around corners they may not know about. We do this through live sessions like the one you're at today. We also have an online robust forum, and we're back with our quarterly summits, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So if you're not already a part of Modern Sales Pros, you'll be invited to join right after this event. Now, speaking about our summit, if you like this content, we're back with the next virtual Modern Sales Pros Revenue Excellence Summit, Camp Modern Sales, happening next month on July 18th to the 19th. We have over 15 plus events, 3,000 Modern Sales Pros in attendance, and we have about 35 high caliber speakers from SalesLoft, Outreach, Gainsight, Stage 2 Capital, plus so much more. I'm actually going to drop the link in the chat. Be sure to register for the event. It's going to be a great one. And some housekeeping notes. This event is being recorded, so if you have a colleague or friend that couldn't make it, rest assured the presentation along with the recording and key takeaways will be made available on the MSP previous event page before the end of the day. Second, if you have a question for Jason, please use the Q&A function at the top right-hand corner or in the chat, and we'll be sure to get them at the end of the event. And lastly, this event wouldn't be made possible without our awesome sponsor. Exactly has helped thousands of companies and millions of sellers around the world beat their revenue target. Using Exactly solutions, leaders can look past the current quarter to create revenue streams for long-term growth. Quick identification and implementation of revenue plans, quotas, and territory improvements are easy. Exactly's intelligent revenue platform is the only solution that aligns sellers' behavior with boardroom strategy to create a resilient, predictable, and profitable business. Learn more about Exactly here. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Be sure to check them out. They're doing awesome things. Now, enough about me. I'm going to pass it off to Jason, who will be leading today's masterclass. Jason, take it away.
Thank you very much. Um, I should apologize up front. The blurring on my screen effectively cuts off the top of my head, and oftentimes my hands disappear as well. But I assure you that that picture, which was taken 15 years ago, is what I look like. I want to first thank everyone for joining. I am the senior practice lead at Exactly's advisory arm, and I've been doing sales effectiveness for over 20 years. I started out in the Alexander Group and then spent many years at Deloitte Consulting Salesforce Effectiveness Practice. I then ran the ops and compensation departments for Adecco Staffing, Viridian Energy, Sonic Healthcare, Charter Communications. I helped start the practice here over 6 years ago. And what our practice does is what a traditional advisory service does, but we only have highly experienced consultants with 15 plus years of experience. We do projects much quicker as a result. We charge lower cost as a result of that because we move quicker. Little discovery done. We generally also can pull in the 1,500 companies that exactly administers incentive payments from to leverage for a lot of the benchmarking and the data. Today's topic is around lumpy sales. And lumpy sales is, let me go to the actual presentation here. Lumpy sales, it is especially important in the enterprise space when there are few large deals that occur infrequently. That is a lumpy sale. There are many euphemisms for this: intermittent, lumpy, erratic. I think lumpy gets the point across. This type of a sale puts very extreme stresses on the compensation plan as well as on the forecasts. It puts a lot of pressure onto the rest of the sales effectiveness channel, but it really shows itself in the forecast and in the compensation plan. The reason behind this is that even a slight push or a pull in a lumpy deal can have massive implications on revenue flow and payouts. Large deals are special. They typically have more approval levels. It makes the pipeline velocity very unpredictable. Makes forecasting these deals really tough. Since the number of deals are small, a push or a pull can have an impact on a forecast. Sometimes a single deal can make or break a quarter. When there are sales of these large deals and the numbers of deals are small, compensation plans tend to pay more. They require a skilled salesperson. The level of pay, what we call acceleration, is very high for these people. So you have the potential for unintended high payouts. So this makes it very tough on compensation. It makes it very tough on forecasting. So what I intend to do is the discussion will be broken up into two parts. First part will be compensation under lumpy deals, while the second part will focus on the forecasting. There's, obviously there's going to be a natural break as I transition from compensation to forecasting. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A tab, the chat tab as well. I'll try to, at the end of each section, address any sort of questions that come up. I'll try to keep it moving though. Also, one other bit of housekeeping before we go. Some of these things can be complicated. I'm a technician, engineering person by nature. I will try to mix the complex technical aspects of how to do some of these things along with some of the easier to digest ones. At any point, if there's something that piques your interest or you want to delve more into, please use the Q&A function or the chat function. I'll leave it to Angelica to guide me to either, but I'll also keep an eye on my split screen here. So with that, I'm going to jump into compensation. So rep performance is measured over a period of time. This is called the measurement period. For example, you measure a rep against an annual number. You could pay them monthly, but the overall quota or the sales goal or whatever euphemism you're using is annual. That is the measurement period. The number you measure the reps against is your sales goal or your quota. A rep can expect to get paid more as they move closer to their quota. At certain levels of performance, a rep can expect their pay to get higher. Let's say that over quota, pay starts to increase. That's called acceleration. For example, a rep can get paid 3% up until they hit their quota. After they hit their quota, pay may accelerate to 5%. Therefore, the longer the measurement period, the more a rep will need to wait until they get their accelerated pay. If you have an annual measurement period and they get acceleration above quota, pay is going to be greater at the end of the year because that's when they can expect to hit that higher rate. That is called backloading. If you're dealing with lumpy sales, there's a financial risk to the company. If the company offers accelerated payments whenever they offer it, that is a financial risk to the company because it leads to the risk of explosive payouts. The reason is these deals have unpredictable timing. They can cause payouts to occur when we didn't expect them to. So if we set a quota and a deal pushes or pulls, it's in a period that is no longer covered by the quota, and it can cause either payouts to be excessively low or excessively high. So these big deals are strategic to the company. You have highly skilled reps that are tasked with closing these deals. The reps are going to require big payouts because they're highly skilled. It's a recipe for an explosive payout. So one of the biggest decisions when setting up compensation plans a company can have is how to set their time frame, how often to measure these people. Well, you can see I created a quasi scale there. It's a push and pull between backloading and explosive payouts. If the measurement periods are too short to prevent backloading, if the company creates these plans that measure reps too frequently, let's say monthly, a large sale is going to occur early and you're going to have an explosive payout. If the measurement period is too long to prevent these explosive payouts, the company is going to create these plans that measure, let's say, annually. Then the pay is going to be extremely backloaded. So reps will be paid very little at the beginning of the year and have higher pay at the end of the year. Companies have to get creative about these things. They might increase base pay to retain these reps. If they have these annual periods, they'll put in these unhealthy compensation structures. There's a natural motivation for companies to pay over a longer period of time, to measure rather over a long period of time, to prevent these deals from creating undue explosive payouts and financial risk to the company. But there's pressure coming from the reps to prevent backloading of pay. So how does a company deal with that? Companies will create plan design mechanics that are strange, perverted, and complex. There are, though, some off-the-shelf, simple plan mechanics to help you prevent explosive payouts. So let's first talk about the design mechanics that'll help you prevent explosive payouts, as these are simpler and easy to digest. We're going to start easy with the preventing explosive payouts. Then we're going to get more rough with some of the more difficult things. Those are more advanced options, right? So with that, let's start with explosive payouts. Oh, I, of course, jumped too far. Okay. There are a few design arrows in your quiver to mitigate these explosive payouts. The first one is called deceleration. Deceleration mitigates overpayment risk by reducing payout rates for high levels of achievement. What does that mean? A simple example is the classic 3-5-4 plan. A rep, for example, will get paid 3% until they hit quota. Then they'll get paid 5% for a little bit. But after a certain high level of performance, it'll slow down to 4%. So 3% to 100%, 5% to 150%, and then 4%. The rationale behind all of this is that for ultra high levels of performance, that's due to poor goal setting. Explosive deals, large lumpy deals, you don't anticipate someone to get a really high level of performance. As an example, I just dealt with a company where a rep hit 845% of their goal. They were owed $1.1 million in incentive. And I was tasked with creating a compensation plan to mitigate that. And I pitched this, decelerate. And the conversation was with the rep. Great job, first of all. You hit 845% of your goal. Great job. You're going to be at President's Club. But past a certain point, That's on us for setting your goals so wrong. We got it so wrong. You hit 3 deals early. You managed to pull them early. We didn't expect that. We can't keep paying you at that high rate in perpetuity. That's to reward people who can get past their quota, but it's not meant to bankrupt the company. We have to slow it down. It's still going to be above your initial rate of 3%, but we can't keep paying you that super 5% rate forever. We have to slow it down. And you can imagine that's not a very popular thing to do. It's not popular with the sales team. They like calling it a cap. They like calling it all of these things, but it's not. It's deceleration. Large companies will typically not have these. Smaller companies will. And it's a great thing to put in, but you have to be able to overcome the objections that are bound to come up from the sales team. The next one is the measurement period. That is by far your biggest arrow in your quiver. I mean, it's the most tied to the root cause of the explosive payouts with lumpy sales to begin with. The entire next slide is going to be dedicated to the measurement period. But just to remind you quickly, backloading pay versus explosive payouts. It's on a scale. So we're going to go over some more options on the next slide. So I'm going to hold that off for now. Per deal caps. Okay, automatically some technicians I know are listening to this right now and saying, caps are bad. Yes, but they're all right in specific circumstances. This is one of them. It can only be used in specific circumstances when there are a lot of salespeople involved in a single sale. You can't do this with a single rep. When a single rep is driving a sale, imagine a rep that just worked for 5-10 years closing one big whale, and they close it only to hit a deal cap. You're going to lose that rep. It's a recipe for churn. But imagine that same deal worked by 5 different reps. Now we're getting a little bit more palatable for a per deal cap because that one deal is going to max out the pay. It's going to blow out the pay of 5 different people. And I would argue that 5 people working a single deal, no one person is the person responsible for driving that one deal. Simply, let's take this for break it apart by the sales process. Imagine there are 5 steps to a sales process, a very generic one. Lead generation, lead qualification, presentation, negotiation, close. If a single rep requires a good amount of assistance in 3 of those processes, lead gen, lead qual, present, negotiate, close. If a rep requires help on 3 of those, then I think it's fair game to use a per deal cap. But if the rep holds 4 of these in general, and on let's say the lead gen, they had a lead gen rep helping them, a per deal cap really should not apply. But if they had overlays, if they had managers come in and do the presentation or the negotiation, if they had SCs doing the design and architecture, per deal caps I think are fair game. Okay, so with every set of options, I like to throw in one that's a consultant's secret, kind of a one that you wouldn't normally see, a back pocket solution, if you will. The tiered over quota payments is one of them. So the best way to explain this is by an example. Let's take 2 territories, New York and North Dakota. I always pick on North Dakota. So for New York, let's say that their quota is $10 million. North Dakota is $1 million. Okay? Each of them go over goal by 1 million. For New York, with a quota of 10 million, going over quota by 1 million, it's 10%. That's not typically going to generate an explosive payout. But North Dakota, 1 million quota went over by 1 million. They're going to hit 200%. That's going to have the potential to be an explosive payout. So Once these territories hit quota, let's say that we're very good at setting quotas, but growth is growth. The one in New York, they have a baseline of business. North Dakota has a baseline. They service that. Anything above that is equal effort. Flip it to a commission rate. This is called a bonus flip commission. Once they hit their quota, they get paid the same regardless of the growth. So that 1 million would be paid, let's say, at 4% for everyone. 4% for New York, 4% for North Dakota. What that does is it fixes the cost of production across the business. So you're no longer tied to the original quota amount. Growth is growth. This works especially well in larger companies. It works very well where you have the potential for large payouts because of the baseline level of your quota. The common vernacular is bonus flip commission. All right, so I'm going to keep it moving along. I don't see any questions in the Q&A or chat. I would encourage you to type them in there. The next one is more complicated. I'm sorry for the eyesore. I know this particular slide was pulled from one of our training presentations. I didn't have a lot of time to make it pretty, but it gets the point across. Let's start with that first line. We already noted that pay timing is linked to explosive payouts and backloading. What do we do if a rep needs monthly payments, though? We already know we want to measure them annually to prevent that explosive payouts, but reps have mortgage payments, they have car loans, student loans. They need that monthly commission payment, or at least access to it. So we want to prevent the backloading. We want to do all these things, but what do most companies do? Most companies will pay monthly and measure annually, and they'll create really complicated mechanics like recoverable draws or some sort of early in the year advance against the later year commissions. Or a company will figure out a way to rationalize internally. We need higher base salaries and for these reps, and they'll change the cost structure of the company just to accommodate this. There are alternatives. So let's go to the second line, the quarterly measure on quarterly pay. Some companies don't mind this. Large public companies need to meet Wall Street expectations. They need to meet investor expectations. Every quarter is its own unique period. What happened last quarter, we don't care about. We're in a new quarter. What have you done for me lately? Okay, that's fine. They can put in some sort of deceleration or some sort of risk mitigation, like we went over on the last slide, to design the plans. If a rep hits well in one quarter, it might be worth it to the company to pay out a large amount up to a certain point and then decelerate. But for some companies, for the ones probably on this call, it isn't all right. So let's take that second line and adjust it. A simple adjustment you could do to make quarterly pay but prevent explosive payouts is quarterly caps. It's not a plan cap. It's just quarterly caps. What we're doing is we're saying for Q1, Q2, and Q3, we're going to hold payments above 100%. We're going to say that if you hit 300% in Q1, great, we're capping at 100%. So let me give an example. Picture it as a quarterly advance on an annual number. In Q1, some rep hits 120% of their quota. We're going to pay up to 100%. In Q2, they hit 90%. We pay 90%. Q3, 150%. In Q4, we're going to look at where they achieved for the entire year and uncap it. The over quota acceleration is against an annual number. Well, a little bit complicated mechanic, but it prevents a good amount of the backloading because reps can earn up to 100%. It prevents the explosive payout, or it mitigates it at least because we're making it over an annual number at that point. but it's a bit complicated. It can be a hard sell to an early stage company to do something like that to mitigate it. So let's look at semi-annual plans. This morning, I was talking to, I'm working with a company now, and this came up. Companies have to make their forecasts at the end of the last year. Okay, you have to create financial plans. You have to do all of these things. How can you forecast next November's sales in December of this year? All right, that's tough. So they're not accurate enough right now to avoid explosive payouts. Okay, so let's set the quota semi-annually. And at the midpoint of the year, let's take another swag at that. Let's take another bite of the apple. Let's look at the rest of the year and set a new quota. You set quotas in 6-month increments to try to increase your accuracy of your quotas so that you mitigate the explosive payout, and it's measured against the 6-month quota. Problem is, pay is backloaded on a 6-month cycle because now we have 6-month quotas. We pay every month. So in June, you'll probably have, if you're on an annual calendar, you'll have a hockey stick in pay. Then it'll go down, and then you have another hockey stick. Now, remember I said consultant tricks are always last? Last one is the consulting trick. I do this all the time. It's my back pocket trick. I create 2 measures. Reps need monthly payouts. Measure 1 is a low commission rate. Fixed commission rate, no acceleration. Let's say that companies are used to paying a 10% commission rate. This one's 5%. You hit above 100%, you get 5%. You hit below 100%, you get 5%. It's a commission. Reps get paid. At the end of the year, you have a separate measure, an annual measure, the end of the year bonus. Now, it does backload pay a bit, but reps do get the steady stream and they're uncapped. If someone has an explosive sale, great, they can get paid on it. It's on a lower commission rate, so you're not going to explode the pay to the company. It's on 5% instead of 10% in my example. So the big payout is at the end of the year on an annual measure. It's against an annual number, so that mitigates the risk of the explosive payout. Reps are happy because they get uncapped pay throughout the year. And they're a little unhappy because we just cut their commission rate from 10 to 5 and reserved some of it for the end of the year. All right. Think about the alternatives, though. We just went through some of them. Now, if the company is more concerned about backloading pay, shift some of that money we're reserving for the end of the year. Instead of making it a 5% commission, make it 6 or 7. All right. If they're more concerned about the explosive payout, shift that money to the end of the year. Instead of 5%, 4%. So it allows the company flexibility to choose between backloading and the risk of an explosive payout. So I see some things in the Q&A. This is a perfect time to take a break, to take a breather. Now, do you see that backloading and or acceleration help with retention as well? I guess only if the rep is tracking to quota overage. Now, there's a little undertone here. If we're reserving the pay till the end of the year, that sounds a little, the tone sounds a little like we're holding someone hostage. Yeah, it definitely does that. I would say though that the second part of your thing, Beth always gives me a hard time. I guess that only if the rep is tracking to quota. If they're not tracking the quota, do we want to retain them? And if they're at 40%, they're going to leave anyway. I don't want to keep them. But if they're at 60, 70, 80%, it's a little, it's a pay cut to shift money towards the end of the year that they were used to getting. But remember, we have to look out for the company well-being as well. I would say that we're trying to balance the risk the company is taking of an explosive payout with the backloading we're asking a rep to take. So long answer, but we are we are creating the unintended result that we can be holding certain high performers hostage to stay with the company until the end of the year. I can't see anyone's face in chat, but I hope no one's grimacing at that. I don't see any other things. Alex, am I missing anything in the Q&A? I don't see anything else. Nope, I don't. Nope, I don't see any. Okay, so I will move on to forecasting. And I will say that I wish I could see people's faces, but if we improve the forecasting, everything I just went over kind of becomes moot. All these fancy tricks we just went over and all of the simple tricks as well as the more complicated ones, with more accurate forecasts, you're going to be able to forecast your quotas a little bit better. You're going to allocate them a little bit better. So everything we just went over, it kind of becomes unnecessary. Now, the problem is to get better forecasting, it's a lot more of a lift. Look, if everyone could have better forecasting with lumpy sales, they would have done it by now. It's easy for me as an outside person saying, well, just improve your forecasts and you don't have to do all of these backflips in your comp plan. If it were that easy, you could have done it. But there are some new technologies and some new methodologies out there to do that. So I will warn you that the first one is cutting edge, and being that it's cutting edge, it's going to be more complicated. But let's start with crawling, and then we'll go right into leapfrogging. So let's look at a traditional forecast, or at least how we used to do it in the Middle Ages. You have a deal in the pipeline. You get some sort of methodology to assign a probability of a deal. Probability times the value of the deal equals your forecast. Okay, so this one, $1 million, 50% probability. The forecast is going to drop it in for 500K. Everyone should be collectively rolling their eyes. Is there any situation, any sales situation where you're going to get 500K? It's either going to be 0 or 1 million. Automatically, you're going to have huge variances, large variations in your forecast. The issue is that large deals are going to naturally create these variations. If this deal doesn't materialize, you're not going to get, probability adjusted 500K. You're going to get 0. Most forecasting tools look at aggregate historical trends rather than specific deals. Breaking these trends down into regions, territories, or specific deals, can't do it. If you do enough of these, I'm pointing to my split screen like you could see, but if you do enough of these on this particular slide, you'll probably get close at an aggregate level, or you'll get close to form a budget and to do accrual modeling and whatnot. Close enough that you could run your business. If you have enough of them, large lumpy deals, you don't have enough of them. And you can't break it down by region. You can't break it down by territory. You can't break it down on an individual deal. So this is automatically a problem with large enterprise-wide lumpy deals. Okay, so remember I said we were going to crawl and then jump into the deep end. This was the crawl part. Let's jump into the deep end. AI. AI it's being used as a panacea for every problem. It's not a black box solution. I'm going to go through a simple example of how an AI would work, and it's easier to explain than do the math behind it. This is a best-in-class methodology, and it is very cutting edge in the mathematics involved, nonlinear equations, and all sorts of individualized, customized correlations. But this is more accurate for lumpy sales. Ironically, this is also the Exactly solution. We have a tool called Exactly Forecasting, and it involves AI, and this is a generalized overview of it. And for people from Exactly listening to this, I want it noted that we do have a best-in-class system, and a little bit of a plug for our product. Okay, so let's go through how it's done. First, data is pulled in from an opportunity file to look at predictors. So you pull in all of these opportunity files. The forecaster, whoever that is, can supplement it with their own predictors, but the computer goes through each of the data files, each of the opportunity files, and looks. It combs through them, and it finds correlations, and it tries to find for each deal characteristics, deal size, business was new or not, product type. You can see a small list, sorry, on your screen here, whether the deal was pushed out, pushed in, and it assigns a correlation to that. These are some of the predictors. You can do engineered predictors. The forecaster could go in and it can create different types of predictors, whether the rep win rate was date specific, whether it was how long it was in an active stage. These are all things that can be used as a predictor for deals coming in. And then it could break it down even further and say that, okay, industry type, let's look at sub-industry. Let's look at within the banking industry, was it consumer banking, investment bank? It could do all of these things and comb through looking for best fit predictors. I had a computer scientist explain this to me, and they said it was, rather than looking at the forest, looking at the individual tree and assigning a probability to that tree. It takes these predictors and takes all of this information, and it finds a best fit for an individual deal. So let me give you an example. We have banking. I'll pick on banking. For all of the information we have a deal come in, and it's a banking deal, certain size, certain rep, certain region in the country, certain product. We know that based off of that type of a deal, all the predictors we have that assign it, let's say there are 127 predictors that maximize the correlation for this one deal. And it's the most accurate predictor of this one deal. We don't do that really well. The deal score, the confidence score that we have that this deal is going to close is pretty low. It's 0.4. All right. We assign a confidence score to that, and because it's low, the forecasted value is 0 for that one deal. Okay, let's take another deal. Something related to banking, mortgage, or insurance. I'll pick on insurance. So insurance comes in with this deal, this particular rep, this region, this product, this size of the deal. We look at the computer algorithms come up with a best fit predictor, the combination of what did I say, 127 before? 127 predictors. We find the combination that's the best correlation for this particular one deal. Based off this deal characteristic, we are pretty confident. We'll say that it's a deal score of 0.7, where we're really confident that this one will close. All right. The full deal value is forecasted. It's a lumpy deal. You either take 0 or the full deal value. That's how AI can work. It goes through a lot of, I was about to say something rude, but it goes through a lot of predictors. It finds the best fit for an individual deal, the highest correlation, and then it assigns a confidence to it. How confident are we that this will close? Now, as the people using this system, we can say, you know what? I want it to be really confident. It has to be a deal score of a 0.6, or we jettison it. We could say, you know what, 0.4 is good enough. You could figure out what your risk is. So that is how AI is. Now, there are some limitations to this. Each of these is going to have a limitation. It requires a large pool of data. You have to have a lot of data to do this. And a little less obvious, it's a black box to a lot of people. Unless you go through a really comprehensive description of how a deal score is assigned and how the system spits out a forecasted value, reps aren't going to understand it. It's a black box. And the rep's busy typing in all this information into a CRM, and then it comes up with a forecasted value of 0. There's going to be a lot of skepticism to it. So there are some limitations to this methodology. I'm going to try to keep it moving. Yes, let's go back to the Middle Ages. This is another method that used to be used a lot for lumpy deals. I will admit, I used this when I was back in Deloitte for a company many moons ago. And this one was, it had lumpy deals. And I'll just take an example. $10 million deal in the pipeline, and we have a probability assigned to each of those deals. One $10 million deal is at 25%, another's at 45, 65, 75. The traditional forecast value would multiply the probability times the deal size. But in this one, we're going to set a minimum level, another threshold. Unless it's above 50% confident, it's going to be 0. If it's above 50%, we'll give it the full deal size. All right, then as a forecaster, I would have to go in and assign all of these things to the probability. Okay, it can't just be based off of a rep feeling. Every rep is going to close their deals. That's not going to happen. It has to be based off of these algorithms. If it was stuck in a stage, if it was push or pull. The problem is, no matter how much programming that we do, it's not going to be deal specific like it was for AI. We're not going to be capable of doing all of these complex algorithms to find out for an individual deal what the best correlation is. So it's more accurate than just multiplying the probability times the deal value, but it's still really inexact. But it is another method that's still used, and I call it the dark ages, but we have a lot of companies that are still in the dark ages. To keep things moving, the next one, I did this at Charter. And even though Charter doesn't have these large enterprise-wide deals, I'm guilty of doing this. It works. It works when you have heavy seasonality. I did this last year with a machine tools company. They would sell these large machines to factories, and each deal was worth $20 million. It was measuring equipment at scientific measuring equipment that could go down to the atomic level. Huge cost to these things. They sold generally in January. That's when companies would free up their budget. That's when they would get the new budgets to buy the new toys for the year. So heavy cyclicality in January, trending down towards the end of the year, and then up to January again, but always moving upward. You can't see my blurred out hand. I'll put it in front of here. It's always moving up like this. How you do this? You run 3 regression lines, 3 trend lines, whatever you want to call them, least squared for the fancy name. One for the peak, one for the middle, one for the trough. And you can actually forecast out at an aggregate level with a fairly good level of certainty what the sales are going to be. At this machine tools company, I remember we were forecasting out, and there was a guy who'd been there for 30, 40 years. He was chomping on an unlit cigar in the corner of the room, and he said, "We'll sell that one in January for 10 million. You sell it in June, it'll go for 1." Well, this is why. You're going to have this natural progression. You can do this. It's much more accurate rather, if you run with the flow of seasonality. If you did a single least squares regression, it's going to run right through the center, and you're going to have all these variances up and down. There are some limitations, and one of the big ones is on the lower left. It looks like the seasonality curve had a seizure. It moves up and down tremendously. It's like a stock, just constantly bouncing up, hitting inflection points, moving down. It's going to have a lot of variability at the individual deal level. Deals pull, they push. It's still going to happen. You can get a general feel for the trend line, but it's still going to have these gyrations within the trend line. Shorter term periods, if you try breaking the seasonality into shorter periods, shorter increments, it's good at predicting a 1 month period. If you try doing 1 week, it's not overly accurate. I remember I weighted each of the months in the seasonal forecast and did a least squares regression. But if they would ask me for the next week forecast, I was always wildly off. And then my excuse was, well, look at the month. It's pretty spot on. But that's worthless to us. We needed a weekly level. Well, I need an AI. So let me see if there are any questions at this point. I see that we have about 15 minutes left. I wanted to leave a good amount of room for questions. I do want to end it with one quick thought. Forecasting, that used to be the what was it? One person used to compare forecasting to swinging a dead cat in the moon at midnight and trying to see where things landed. There have been a lot of advances, mostly in the AI section, to create more accurate forecasts. I saw, even when I was creating this presentation, a lot of articles that least squared regressions are just as accurate as AI. Most of those articles were written by statisticians, I might say, but they aren't. AI has quickly overtaken traditional methods. It is much more accurate now, but it does take a system. So with that, I'm ready to turn to questions. I wanted to thank you, everyone who participated in this conversation. And Angelica, I leave it to you. I'm available to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason. That was an awesome session. And if anyone has a question for Jason, we do have a couple minutes. Please use the Q&A function at the top right-hand corner or in the chat. Thank you, Beth, for asking a question. If there's anyone else, we have Jason for a couple minutes. If not, I did leave his LinkedIn on the chat, and I will also follow up via the email with all the information along with the slide deck after the event. So stay tuned for that. And I thank you all for attending. Jason, again, thank you for your wisdom and insights today. Thank you
Sure.
exactly for sponsoring today's event, and we will see you at the next event. Bye, everyone.
Great. Thank you.